Alrighty, so here we are at week 9, and it is that halfway point in the semester, and it's also the point after which, after this week, that if you're going to drop this class, you need to do it before the end of this week. Else, if you don't, you'll end up getting a letter grade. So if you have any questions about that, either check in with a counselor or ask me and I'll help direct you. I don't recommend it at this point. There is still time for you if you're behind to catch up. But I also know that everybody's in their own individual position, so I can't speak to everyone. All I can tell you is generally that's where we're at in the semester. Now, in addition to that, where we're at in our semester, in our class, is that we're now going to make some changes in week 9 to our weekly work. And I thought to help set that context, I would talk about in the simple syllabus, in our syllabus, that there are 3 types of work for this class, and you've been doing one of them, which is the first one, the weekly work. So all the code alongs and the discussions where you write code and then everybody looks at everybody's code once you've written code, that accounts for 60% of your grade, okay? And then 20% of your grade is what we're going to start working on this week, okay? Now 20% of your grade is going to be based on writing the decision-making app broken into 7 different submissions, of which we'll add requirements each step, and that actually will be with us from here now to the beginning of the end of the semester. So we start step 1 this week. Matter of fact, I just recorded the video for that I will at least link in the discussion here, so that, because the sooner you've started thinking about that, the better. Now, for those students who asked for a preview of work earlier on in the semester, it's pretty much that, although I did make some changes to it, and I ended up re-recording it today as I'm re-recording this one, because I felt like I wanted to make sure I was a little more clear about some items. But more than anything, understand, right, that we start a part of our next part of our class, which accounts for 20%, that's broken into 7 items, so you can divide that to know how much each one is worth. And then in at the end of week, or actually in week 11, that's when the window for the code review, now you only have 1 code review, and that accounts for 20% of your grade as well. So of course this makes up 100% of your grade, and that's why you've heard me you've heard me hopefully talk about the importance of these code challenges in helping you develop the skill to understand the code, because you're going to be coming into a code review with me based on anything we've already written, and definitely the code that you've written for your decision app is something that could be in that code review. And I already talked about in week 7, I think it's week 8 actually, I went over the code as it existed. Is a good way to start making sure you have a good understanding of that code. There'll be a little more code, matter of fact, at the end of this week, because we continue to build out the carbon footprint app, we will end up adding more functionality to it. But we're starting back with our decision making app at the very beginning and writing conditionals using comparisons to write a decision-making app. But so more than anything, I want you to know the context for which our changes are going to happen this week. So when we look at this week, we are dropping a code along. So there's not a code along on Thursday night. There's one on Monday night. Again, if it's a holiday, it's moved. And then we have our code discussion. Now in this week we have we're implementing another module, and we're implementing local storage as far as our code alongs go. Do make sure, and this is something that I've had really good discussions with students about, and it's helped me clarify some points about making sure that when I say, submit your code for a code along, that you make sure that commit is in there. As a matter of fact, this week I ended up adding a line into the instruction to make sure that you have an actual commit related to your code challenge. Now, if you attempt that code, you don't get it working, tell me what you've tried, and I evaluate both of those to determine your grade. Okay, if I see that you've just coded the solution and you've submitted that as your code, it will hurt your grade. So, just understand the importance of A, doing the code challenges, and B, making sure you get the commits, because how I grade, and I'll just reiterate this, is your code work? Does it have the right commits? And then I evaluate those commits to see how well did you track along with where we were at? And especially important for me are those when you do the code challenges. Okay, so the other thing we tackle this week, an important week besides the decision-making app, is we look at form validation. And in this case, and I've said this before, but we're bringing it back now, is that using the required attribute on an input field is a minimal. It's very minimal. We need to have more robust form validation because we want to make sure when we're asking for user input, we do our best to get the best input. You have felt this when you filled out a form. I know when I fill out a badly organized and validated form, it is very frustrating. So this is the beginning of writing some form validation, and I ended up giving you a code example I found and walking you through, because I give you two paths to actually do some custom validation. I give you a video from Web Dev Simplified. It's a little old, but it still's valid. Or I give you a path where I walk you through the code and I talk about how you would integrate that code into our app. And I like the code. I think the code that I got off ChatGPT is a good start. And that's one of the things about using chat, right? Is you want to be able to read and understand the code and not just use it. That's the other conversation I've been having with students is like, if you're just going out to chat, we've talked about this, but I think it's just important to iterate it, especially since I'm giving you some code from chat, but then I walk you through understanding that code so you can implement it into our code base. Because even though you may get code from out there, again, I recommend trying to write code on your own if you need help, you are still responsible for describing that code and understanding it, because that's part of what you're learning here. So anyway, when we get to that, I guess where I led into this was that now on Monday you'll have your normal code along, but then on Thursday, where you had you prior to this had a code along and then a discussion, you will have a discussion and the first step in your decision-making app. Okay, so I've said this before, and I think it was in week 7 that I said, the importance of working ahead whenever possible. And I think everybody says, yeah, we all agree that's a good idea. It's just like logistically it doesn't happen for whatever reasons for everyone, but students see the benefit. I was grading this morning and I had a student who missed. I looked at their code and they had an error on it and they had the chance to fix it. And especially true on something like your decision app, right? So that's why I know I have it at the end of the week, but I want us to get through the content and then have that towards the end, at the end of the week. But it does create, of course, helping you organize yourself around how to effectively work through that week. And what's great too is that I have a whole group of students who are actually working ahead in this class, and that's helpful to me because they will find things that I need to make sure I've clarified. So I just want you to know how the week's changing, what we're doing this week, and to say that, I always go in and pull your code, see if it works, look at your commits. But sometimes I may miss something in there, but generally those are definitely the things that I look at. But I also realize where I need to be more clear. And you saw me actually at this point, you've already seen me do this in week, I think it was week 7. I ended up writing some more content to make sure students understood the importance of it being their code. All right, so in this attendance post, here's just the last thing I'll go over here is that this is the 2 options I talked about for the form validation. Oh yeah, I didn't even talk about local storage, but so at this point, just FYI, we're going to end up implementing something called local storage which is simulating the idea of storing something out on the network, on the internet, which would be much more feasible and a better option. But for what we're doing, we're going to make we're going to use a piece of our local computer's space to have persistent data, because in our form so far we've had volatile data. Anytime we'd refresh, that would go away, and you want to have the experience of at least knowing how to make data persist. But again, think about this as we're implementing this, is that it's really simulating the idea of what you would be using a cloud platform, most likely a database. There's just so many Heroku's out there, cloud storage from Google, Azure, Amazon, all has places that you can store persistent data. So we're just getting the idea, or at least the beginning of the experience here. And and by the way, you also want to start this week with working code. Now here's a solution. And I know I've already shown that last time, but in case you missed it, make sure you commit your code. And I talked about this, I believe, in week 8, but make sure you have that code in your private repo, right, in week 9, and that you do a beginning commit, because once we start into the code reviews, I've noticed sometimes students aren't committing that beginning files. And I do talk about, and in this, I believe in here, if not, this is about the modules and passing references, because that's something that we were doing. And so I just gave you the prompts I was using. And so here's the solution video, and here's the video from the decision making app step 1. If you'd like, that detailed list of, even though I go over it in the video, if you want it in PDF form, let me know. I'd be happy to provide it. So what can you reply with? Of course, any question that you have regarding the content that I've already covered, right? And in this week, I've kind of emphasized a couple things, like in this case, I'd like to hear, did you realize the way this course is organized as far as the grade, the way the grade is broken down into different parts? Was that new to you, or did you catch that at the beginning? Or if you have any questions about that? And then, do you have an idea already, maybe in your decision-making app? Like, I talk about my decision that I'm using. It's something for definitely I do every day, which is making decisions about what kind of workout and what kind of calorie intake I have based on my workout, and my workouts based on the particular day. So, do you have some ideas you want to have already thought of regarding maybe your decision-making app? So that would be 2 great things if you didn't have something related to the rest of the content. All right, have a good week. I'll talk to you soon.